Hello, my name is Anastasia Allen, and I am the Executive Director of Navigate STL Schools. I go by Staci. I am here with Darryl Diggs. Darryl, tell us what your title is and what you do.
All right, thank you. So first of all, thank you, Navigate STL, and also Miss Staci for having me in the space. So a little bit about what I do. I started in education in around 2012. I started as a middle school science teacher, just trying to figure out my way, because actually when I first graduated from high school, it turned into a situation where I really did not know what I didn't know, what I didn't, what I wanted to pursue. And I just found myself in teaching by happenstance and also a little bit of divine intervention. So right now, currently, I'm a building principal in the St. Charles County area for a middle school. So it kind of comes full circle. Started in middle school, transitioned into a little bit of high school work, and then now I'm back as a principal.
Awesome. So you got into it a little bit, but tell us about your K12 experience.
Gotcha. So my K12 experience ranges because growing up, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, branched out. My dad jumped into some government work, which had to travel around the country. And in that, I experienced just the culture of Guatemala, living in Panama for a little while. And then we came back to the States, living in St. Louis. More so wanted to get back to Memphis, but this was the closest that we can come, due to my dad's deployment. And so in that, we lived in downtown St. Louis, Gentry's Landing, went to Benjamin Banneker Elementary, formerly known as Colored School Number 5. From there, branched out to the county, went to Storm and Stuflin, which is a phenomenal school. And then Hazelwood, took me in because we lived in the school district. From there, transferred still, again, quite a bit, graduated. And then now, when I think about my experience broadly, K-12, it's wide ranging, multifaceted, many different layers. And I think that's what gives me the ability to be a leader now. And even in my, side work with Black males in education.
Awesome. So talk to me a little bit. You said you work with Black males in education or Black male educators. How is that work kind of fueled by your past experience as a whole, as a teacher and through K-12?
So in my experience as a K-12 student, I can count on one hand, specifically 3 fingers of having a Black male as my teacher. So for example, graduated from Hazelwood Central. The teacher that speaks out most to me was Mr. Barnes. He was my human and physiology teacher. And what was incredible about him is that he played no games, took no stuff. He gave us a lot of worksheets, but it definitely, formed me into the individual that I am today. From K-12 and going off into post-secondary, I had another teacher. His name was Dr. Stykes. Again, the only one in the space, the only teacher I had. And I had a lot of teachers at this point. And again, very consistent. He had a system about himself that made sure that we produced quality work. And that's something that, again, I do with my space. So now in my side endeavors, Black Males in Education, BMESTL, it's important that we're able to not only promote, recruit, but we also want to support, mentor, and develop the future Black male educators. So while there's educators in the space right now, very few of us, about a little more than 1% in Missouri, we need to grow that number, because right now there are young people in education or young people in school that can graduate without having an experience of someone that looks like me. Right now, predominantly the field of education, we have many women, in the space. Totally great, totally fine. Had amazing women educators, phenomenal. But as I'm trying to aspire to be something different, something a little bit more, it helps to have that representation. It helps to have someone that I could be the model behind. And so in my work, that's what we're trying to do.
That is so poignant. As you were talking, I tried to think who was my first Black male educator? 6th grade, Mr. Webb, Pickett Elementary. He actually fought to have me in his class. I was assigned to another 6th grade teacher, and he was the person who gave me the information that I needed to apply for an early scholarship program, taught me about Black Wall Street, and kind of truly put me on this activism standpoint from recognizing how historical perspectives can kind of lead you through the future. So when you talk about that importance, I see it and I'm like, that's my first one, but I'm almost certain until I got into college and started taking African American studies classes, it's my only Black male educator experience in 6th grade. And I was supposed to go to a different teacher because they thought that this teacher was better with gifted and talented students. And Mr. Webb said, no, that is a really smart young Black girl, and I'm not going to let her go that route.
And so here's to branch off from that. How many young people don't have someone that advocates the same way that Mr. Webb advocated for you?
Mm-hmm. That's very true. So you talked a little bit about your kind of experience all over the city of St. Louis, but being relatively native to the area in terms of your K12 experience. Can you share a little bit about education in the city of St. Louis and what that kind of means for us today?
Mm-hmm. So right now, we're still in the midst of our pandemic. And what COVID has done for us in the landscape of education is to shine a light on inequities and also the haves and the have-nots. So for example, there are districts all across St. Louis specifically that they do have access to Chromebooks or Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, there are some that are still running the packets en masse. And so as we think about our kids, what is going to happen to them as they experience this situation long term, right? What's going to happen to these young people a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So right now, we're developing a cohort of students that are going to be impacted. And unfortunately, it's not for the positive due to the inequities across all of the school districts, right? Why does one school district need to have all the resources, the plethora of personnel, and also the expertise, and the other one right next to it not? And so again, what I am hopeful to see is that through this pandemic that we're more intentional, we're more purposeful, we're also spending more time asking deeper questions, and we're not just going to play games with surface level equity. Right now, that word is like putting on your socks and shoes every day. Everybody's using it, everybody's doing it, but do we really know what it means and what that looks like? And I think, honestly, COVID is going to help us uncover those pillars.
I agree. So like thinking even in the history of St. Louis, we all know Sumner High School was the first high school west of the Mississippi to even allow Black students. So how do you see like that historical perspective play out in some of the inequities that you just highlighted?
So the historical perspective of all of these schools. So for example, there's a school in St. Charles County called the Franklin School. That was one of the original buildings that was created to house only Black children, while the other schools were for all white young people. And so while we still have these institutions that were built to oppress, I think it's also important that we acknowledge and also we learn about this type of history that is still out there, because if we don't understand, reach back and try to figure out what's going on, they become vessels of dust, and then we just move forward to continue what was created for us then. And so again, as I think about just K12, St. Louis and education, we're still in the same place where we were. We're just allowing the mixing of people, but we're still oppressing folks en masse.
That's very true. You highlighted this point a little bit earlier. Education is a space that's traditionally seen as women are teachers, or that more white people are teachers. I would like to ask you the question, like, where do you even find like this strength in terms of your mission to keep showing up and doing this work and creating safe spaces for your young colleagues, your young male colleagues in general?
Gotcha. The strength comes in understanding your voice and knowing that your pain and your authenticity will propel you into your purpose. Again, I like to tell stories, and I think by nature, through the culture, we like to, speak a lot or talk a lot. So there was a time where I was at this particular school during lunch duty, and I'm just watching kids eat lunch, making sure nobody goes, crazy or sideways. And one of my students came up to me later and she said, "Hey, Dr. Diggs, you're on Instagram." I'm like, "What do you mean?" So she shows me her phone, and at that time, instantly I felt isolated, in fear, and I didn't know what to do next, because it was an image of myself, my face, my likeness on Instagram with the N-word plastered all over it. Now, with that being said, then you have the comments, then you have the likes, and then there are the shares when it comes to Instagram. And so immediately I wanted to understand, like, why is this funny? Why is this a thing when you know me? I'm very transparent. You understand where I come from and also my level of expectation. But we still feel the need to have this layer of racism, right? Of ideology that is not fueled by anything good. Also, I have 2 young boys, one of them of which went to the preschool attached to my building, right? Like I can go see them at any point during my day. what does this mean for him? If this is happening to me, what is going to happen to him, right? What is going to happen to my family? We're both very public individuals. You know, if you want to know anything about me, you can look me up. But still, we find this to be funny. So again, that was the fuel to create BMESTL. While this is happening to me, this is nothing new. This is nothing that is by happenstance, right? These are things that are happening to Black male educators on a regular basis, causing us to either be isolated or to leave the profession, or to not even promote that this is a profession for young Black boys to get into. Very often we talk about, hey, you could be an athlete, you could be an engineer, you could be a doctor, you could be an architect, you can do all these incredible things. But we very rarely talk about, hey, you know, you could be a teacher, you know, why not? And so again, if we aren't intentional about changing the narrative, changing the game, then we're going to continue to have less than or just about 1% of BMEs in St. Louis, in Missouri. We're also going to continue to have just over 2% across the country of the United States. This will forever be a thing unless we're intentional about trying to change the narrative. Again, my two boys, they're 4 and 6. If I don't do something, then who will? If I don't, then we're going to continue to have very low numbers. At some point, we have to change what we've been doing, because very often, and you know, please stop me because I can go forever, but very often we get the question, hey, why can't we find anybody? Where are they? Where are they? We're not objects. Again, if we're intentional about inclusion, if we're intentional about diversity and anti-bias and anti-racism work, then you know what you need to do. What you need to do is to not, what you need to do is affect policy. Right? Because what you measure is what you do. And if that's where the energy is flowing, that's where we need to go.
That is a very true statement. I guess my next question for you, you've talked a lot about representation. Can you tell us a little bit about the merit of standardized tests? This is where I want to go with this question. You've heard the rumors or the statistics, or however you want to play it out anecdotally, that you know, prison cells are determined by third grade test scores of African-American boys, which may or may not be true. But all of the evidence is leading to around the fact that, you know, third grade is an indicator of whether or not someone's going to read on grade level. Being able to read on grade level is an indicator of graduation. And if you don't graduate, statistically, those who drop out of high school are more likely to go to prison. So what's the merit behind that kind of testing for students? And what role do you think that Black male educators or Black educators in general play in helping students with standardized tests? You know, like, I think back to my experience taking those tests. Like, I didn't know what a yacht was, but luckily in 6th grade, I had a teacher who said, hey, let me help you understand this isn't set up for you. A yacht is a boat. So when you read this, try to get around these words that you don't understand and get the context of the question. So he knew when he was reading these tests, this is something that people that I educate that come from where I come from don't understand. And he was very intentional about making sure that we were able to get the context. In that elementary school, he did have one of the highest standardized test pass rates. And I'm going to say for me personally, it was because he was able to do, like, that's an example to this day I remember from like 20 years ago. So talk to me just a little bit about the merit behind standardized tests and ways that culturally competent educators can assist students of color in passing.
I think it's widely known that these tests are made for a specific reason, you know, for norming a certain group of people, and also to isolate and seclude a bigger group of people, you know, another group of people. More specifically, the merit of these tests is to rank and defile all of these educational institutions. Right now, there's a list of, you know, 1 to 10. The greatest school district, the greatest this, the greatest that, right? Yeah, there's that, but what is it based upon? Right now, all I have to do is pick up the phone or maybe, you know, shell out a little bit of money and I can be on that list. Period. I can still have, my school can still be trash, you know? And I say that to say this, like, the merit of these tests, while I believe in understanding, hey, where we need to be and also how we can grow, but we also have to understand the makeup of these tests. The majority of these tests are predominantly about reading and comprehension. Are we getting that type of knowledge in our classrooms? Are we having teachers spend time diving into these historical stories that are whimsical? No, we're not. Right? Are we diving into Black history and into the roots of W.E.B. Du Bois? Like, are we talking about, Booker T. Washington? Are we leaning on Malcolm X and Dr. King? Like, in depth, we are not. We're just skimming the surface, and we have groups of students, primarily Black and brown, that aren't getting exactly what they need when it comes to their longevity from not only K-12, but for the rest of their future. And these tests, they isolate them and funnel them into, again, struggling long term, right? And just like to your point about the school to prison pipeline, it's there. Right? There's an organization called the National Alliance of Faith and Justice. They have this big program called Pen or Pencil, Penitentiary or Pencil. And so with standardized tests, the way that they're structured, which is all nebulous, is creating vessels of young people that are going to be funneled into that left and right unless something drastically changes. Because again, the formula that they create these things is off of, again, white norms and around reading and comprehension, where the schools themselves aren't building us up to do our very best, and also giving us that knowledge and also influence of that type of literature. For me personally, like, I struggled on the ACT. One, it was too long, and two, it was too boring. There were times, and I hate to admit this, that I fell asleep, woke up, and then I finished. I didn't do very well. But again, I say all that to say this. I wasn't deeply invested because the material that was on the paper did not speak to me. Like, now, with that said, I have other strengths and other talents. How come we don't measure those pieces, right? How come in our schools we aren't accentuating those aspects of young people instead of trying to put them in a box? And that's what the standardized test situation is doing for all of our people.
So I want to follow up on that. What role do you think culturally competent educators play in helping students kind of overcome this pigeonholing that they're being put into by standardized tests?
Being culturally competent and also having curriculum that is culturally relevant is not only great, for Black and brown people, for the folks. It's also good for white kids too. Like, we could either create systems that are very vanilla, very A to B to C, or we can diversify the offerings, for our folks, for all kids. And again, for me, using, my own, lens, what I needed in school was someone that could speak directly to me, give me a variety of ways to show that I know the material, and then I could do it at a high level. And right now in mass, that's not happening. And so being able to infuse culturally relevant pieces that speak to the history or the culture or just another lens that is beneficial, for all, we're not going to get too far or go very long, because not everybody's living and breathing that kind of life or that kind of work, or maybe they just don't know what they don't know.
That's very true. As a parent and an educator, how do you determine your values, and what process did you guys go through to figure out what was the best fit school for your children?
So for me, right now, they're 4 and 6. So when they were moving into preschool, we did our homework. We talked to people we knew. We didn't rely heavily on what the district put out, because nobody's going to put out abysmal numbers or abysmal stats. So we went straight to the people that we knew. In the school district that I worked in, I was there, so I knew where I didn't want them to go. And the reason why I say that is because, like, if I were to be in their shoes, I would want a particular type of experience. And with me being in control as their father, I know exactly what I want that to look like. And so another story, there's a particular preschool in this school district that has a phenomenal teacher, incredible program, and they do a really good job of connecting with the students and also the students with each other. And so unfortunately, to get into this particular school, it was like, you have to like jump in line. Well, I didn't want to miss my shot, and I knew how important this was. So I got up about 3:30 in the morning, went out there and stood in line at 4 o'clock for the door to open at 8. For me to make sure that my kid got into that school. Now, what makes this important is because if I can get my first kid into that school, then my second one is an automatic shoe-in. And so if education is that important, which we all know that it is, we're willing to do whatever it takes. So if I'm willing to forego sleep and my rest and my peace for the betterment of my kids, then that's what I'm just going to do. So yeah, it was cold. It was below freezing and I was out there for, 3.5, 4 hours, but I would do it in a heartbeat because I think any of us would, for our students. Now that they're older, it's important for me that they have a diverse offering of people that, again, do not look like them, right? At their particular school, now that they're a little bit older, there's a wide offering and a wide array of educators. We have white, Black, Hispanic. We have a Filipino, teacher that is in the space, and I want them to be able to see everybody. I want them to have this plethora of experiences. And so for parents, if I were to talk openly to parents about school and education and where to go, I would want them to ask deep questions, like interview the school, interview the principal, talk to them, ask for a visit, like go see. Now, what I do know, what's incredible about Navigate STL is that, like, you all have created a platform to do just that, right? And so I would encourage all parents to, again, do your homework, talk to people, jump online that's not directly connected to the school. Because if it's directly connected to the school, that might not be the best information you want to go find.
So you just hit on something really important. I would guess my question to you is, what do you think is that number one tool or that number one questions that family needs to know or ask when they're trying to navigate that K-12 space, whether it be finding a good kindergarten or finding the right middle or high school that's going to set your child up for future success?
I would actually two things.
Okay.
I would ask for a tour. That's what I would do first. And then I would ask to go by your advanced level class, whether it's math, science, ELA, whatever. Ask to go by there. And then when you go, take a look at what you see. Is that where you want your child to go? And the reason why I give you that narrative is this. When I worked at a particular high school, we had a very seasoned counselor. And he would say, now, Dr. Diggs, how about you go up there to the top floor and go and walk into that science class and let me know what you see? And I did. I didn't see me. Not at all. But I wonder why. Why is that? What's happening at the high school to produce that type of experience to where there's not anybody like me? What's happening at the middle school, because middle feeds the high? What's happening at the middle level? And again, elementary feeds the middle. What's happening with our babies that are K5, K6? And so, like, I say all that to say this, hey, grab that tour and find out what the highest level looks like. And if you don't like what you see, then ask some really deep questions. How is this happening?
Why is it happening?
Why is it happening? Amen.
Yeah. And my last question to you is, what do you think is the most important thing that an organization like Navigate STL Schools can do to, one, prepare families for this journey, but two, to help educational systems in schools grow?
What I would say, in regards to Navigate STL Schools and the platform that has been created, which is robust, is that I think more people need to be aware that, there is this type of resource. And while we haven't arrived, any of us, we can always grow. And so I would want to be in tune to the parents. Again, what do you need to know that you might not be asking right now, but you would like to if you were able to sit down with someone? And then what Navigate STL Schools could do then is, answer those questions for them, because they might not have the ability to do it at that time. I think the way that the structure is set up right now is phenomenal. I think it gives us the ability to really see what's happening in our schools and to see where we need to, put our roots down so that our kids can go to that institution.
Awesome.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.